All right, we are live. So let's start from where we left off. So we were talking about previously strict mode, about the strict mode. So I'll try with uh, some examples that how it's JavaScript behave differently in strict mode and normally. So we were talked about the freeze one, and after that, uh, I talked about this prototype object deletion, which is not possible in JavaScript. And I talk all about this, but at that live stream, the audio was not recordable, so I had to delete that one and start it over again. So here we are, and let's just go these examples quickly. So let's just start with the strict mode off. So deleting, uh, the thing is that even after deleting the objected prototype, it still has this one. But the so what does it mean? So it means this delete operation didn't work. And in useTree, the thing is that it tells me that it didn't work and we shouldn't do it. So like that, cannot delete property prototype of function. So cannot delete a prototype properties. So here we are. This example is done. The other example is about the duplicate arguments and function. So here, if the use trick is not there, it doesn't throw any error because these arguments are same. Uh, it doesn't throw any error, and we shouldn't pass the same argument twice and like access the same argument twice in the function. Now with the strict mode, it did give me an error like duplicate parameter name not allowed in this context. So so that's a good one. We should remember this when we want to give an example of this strict mode and not strict mode way of doing JavaScript. Here, the this thing, because we are using Node.js, in the Node.js, the this is going to be an object. But in the window, or in the global object, this would be undefined. So here, this will console log 2. Okay, it didn't work. 1 second. Now you can see this is pointing to an object. In strict mode or not in strict mode, both will point to an object because we are using Node.js. But in browser, this will point to the window, and if you are using strict mode in browser, then it will this will be undefined. And now let's another thing that I talked about that is creating synchronous functions and asynchronous functions. So I just created an example of asynchronous function like this. So sync and set timeout, and we are passing this callback, which is console logging the second. So you already know that the execution would be like the first will call, then third will call, then after some time, second ago, the second will call. So let's just print it out. So first, third, and second. So it was a synchronous, asynchronous function that I have created to just learn about this. What we say, this topic. So now let's just move on to the third one. So here is the what are the pros and cons of using promises instead of callbacks in JavaScript. So what I think is there is no like um, there is no uh, disadvantage of using like promise in JavaScript. One thing is that if you want to make a promise blocking, or if you want some results to be calculated first before some operations, then you can use async await and use the promise inside that and await the response. That way we can do it. But let's see what would be the disadvantage of using like cons of using promises instead of callbacks. So promises offer a cleaner alternative of callbacks. So promise have the so first pro would be cleaner cleaner syntax. And callback hell, you already know that callback hell would be um, happens when we are using the callback JavaScript way of coding. So so you already know that the syntax would be much cleaner because of the uh, chaining of this then and chaining of then and catch, and finally it would be much cleaner. So let's move on. Helping to avoid callback hell and making asynchronous code more readable. So let's talk about that already. We have talked about it. We talked about it. I mean, I have to improve some skills for the speaking, but let's just try to understand what I'm saying. So another thing is they facilitate writing sequential and parallel asynchronous operation with ease. So this is a pro of the callback. Not callback, promises. However, using promises may introduce silently more complex code. I mean, on what basis? Didn't give the example. Let's just ask the chat GPT to give an example of the this one. Examples. So great question. Let's break it down. Pros and cons. So pros will be avoid callback hell, easier error handling, chaining, parallel execution. Cons, slightly learning curve. There is no learning curve like in the promise. Verbosity, what is this? For simple async task, promise can feel heavier than callbacks. I mean, it can be because we created a function earlier that sync with the set timeout. It was a callback function. We can make it with promise as well. I think with promise it would be better, but for the fast coding, I just use that callback function of sync. Third one is needs care. Forgetting dot catch leads to unended promises. So this one is also a con of callback hell as well. So in callback we also have to like catch these errors first by some if else statement. So both have to take take the this error handling into consideration. Now examples would be callback hell. So it's already declared, which is so the pros is that promise chaining, which is no nesting. Now parallel execution. Okay, parallel execution is done by the promise. Error handling is much cleaner with the promise itself. So it the chat GPT has also not able to find the disadvantage of the promises against callback. So it's kind of, let's just assume that this question is asking on the basis of how we are going to uh, like avoid callback hell and use promises to improve our syntax. Let's move on to another thing. Explain Ajax in as much as detail as possible. Okay, I think the Ajax also it's very old, so not a lot of people use it, me including. So let's just try to understand what it says. AJAX, asynchronous JavaScript and XML, facilitates asynchronous communication between the client and the service. Let me just quickly check that if the audio is there or not. I think it's there because of this bar. So let's move on. uh, right here. It uses techniques like XML, HTTP request, or the fetch API to send and receive data in background. In modern web application, the fetch API is more commonly used to implement AJAX. So fetch is the way to implement AJAX. It's trying to call. So these things are not like very different. I mean, the implementation is different, but the uh, calling the functionality that the both are using, both are achieving the same thing, which is calling an API. So if we are calling this API like let's just call it with how it's defined. Let's XHR is equal to new XML HTTP request. Then it did the get the function like on ready state change function. Inside it says that ready state is equal to request dot done. Okay, if it's 200. Okay, so it's like error handling. Okay, so the fetch, so instead of using fetch, it's using that dot open, and like it fetches us. I'll just try to implement, because for me it will be the first time. So xh, what was it, xhr xhr is equal to new xml http request. It's a long name. It's quite hard to remember. Even the interviewer won't ask these types of question, because most probably he himself is not going to know this way of fetching. So let's just try ourselves. Dot, what was the method? On ready state change. I think it was this method. In that we are going to get, okay, this is the function on ready state change is equal to function. So it's overriding this function. I don't know why it did it. I mean, because of the error handling, I think because of the error handling, uh, it it does it. Uh, let us try it without um, like what we say, without this thing. We can directly call open, like xhr open dot send. Let's just create a function where we are going to call it. So let's just create a function const fetch request is equal to, it will be an async function, async, and here we are going to copy this whole thing like this and paste it. xhr dot send. Why we are using send? What's the purpose of it? Sends the request to the server. Okay, it sends the request. So const response is equal to await. It should give me the response, right? So let's just console log the response and call this fetch method. Ho ho ho, it's not defined. Why? What? Huh? Huh? How? Mm, let's just try with the chat GPT, right? It's correct or not. Not working by the XML request, but here's the issue. Does not return a promise. So it just gives you undefined. That is why response is not working. Okay, XML in promise. So open, onload, and then send. Okay, 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 okay. I mean, uh, status, and then JSON XML request text. Onload. So we are going to get, I think, the onload functionality will give us that the result. So let's just try to implement right here without using response. So it's going to be the callback help functions. So onload, it going to be parsing it, and we don't need this reject and resolve. We are just simply going to console log it like this. Now let's see what happens. Okay, it's not defined, still not defined. Are we using use strict? Nope. It should be outside. Should be. Okay. Okay, 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 okay. Just give us the reference error, and so try to understand why this is happening. Okay. Seeing is not defined happens because Node.js does not provide. That's the browser only API. Okay, okay. So I think the fetch is also okay. Option use built-in fetch Node.js version. Okay. So one difference that we got from here between XML request and the fetch is that Node.js by default provides the fetch thing, and that XML request is only works on Node.js. Okay, XML requested only works on browser. So here we got the answer with the fetch. And then we can fetch it with node fetch. Then we can fetch it with Axios. So these are the different types of fetching. So it's, I mean, good to know that there is some XML request. Okay, what are the advantage and disadvantage using Ajax? Ajax is a technique in JavaScript that allows web pages to send and retrieve data asynchronously from server without refreshing and reloading the entire page. Advantage: smoother user experience. Update happens without full page reloads like in mail and chat applications. Lighter server load, only necessary data is fetched via Ajax, reducing server load and improving perceived performance. I mean, you can only say performance of the web page, but let it be. Maintains client state, user interaction, and any client state are persisted within the page. So if you're using the HTML page inside the script tier, I think we can use this XML. Disadvantage: reliance on JavaScript. Disable the Ajax functionality breaks. As everything we're going to break because because of JavaScript disabling. So bookmarking issue. Okay, SEO challenge. Search engine may struggle to index dynamic content. Performance concerns. processing Ajax data on low-end devices can be slow. Okay. What are the difference between XML and fetch in JavaScript and browser? I think it's repeating itself, but let's just read it out first. XHR, XML, HTTP request, which is XHR, and fetch API are both used for asynchronous HTTP request in JavaScript. Offers a cleaner syntax, promise-based approach, and more modern features set compared to XHR. However, there are some differences. Event callbacks, while fetch utilizes a promise chaining. So fetch is by default utilizes the promise chaining, and it is an event based callback. So getting the data would be from a callback itself, not using some modern techniques like async await or promises. And fetch provides more flexibility in headers and request bodies. Okay, so we can provide some headers, right? We can also provide some headers with the XML request as well, but it could be some limiting factors, I think, in XML request as well. So that's fine. So fetch support cleaner error handling with catch. Okay, error handling is held by the catch. Inside XML request, I think we have to do error handling ourselves inside that onload function. Now, handling caching with XML request difficult, but caching is supported by fetch. Okay, so the caching itself is supported by fetch, and it's difficult on a XHR request by default in the option cache. Okay. Now, fetch requires abort controller for cancellation, while XML request it provides abort property. Okay. For cancellation, it requires abort controller. Now, XML request has good support for progress tracking, while fetch lacks. Okay, progress tracking. I mean, I didn't understand that part. Okay, let's ask ChatGPT. I did not understand this part. Can you explain with example? Important difference has built-in progress events like progress, load start, load end, so you can track download or upload progress. Okay, now I think the importance of XML request lies in like incremental progress loading. It is very helpful in some cases. So like it is very helpful. XML request, open, get URL, true, response type blob, on progress. Okay, length computable, we are getting from the event itself in on progress. And there is also we can get the percentage. I think I have see a React component, a download component where XML is used for like that progress bar uh, to just fill out the progress of the downloading process. I think that it was using that Excel XHR there. Now, now I know that it's how much it's important. Okay. Now I get it. Fetch lacks this. Okay, so fetch is lacking this. That I know. Uh, Work around streaming with fetch. Okay, we can also do it in fetch by reader response body get reader. Then content length. We can get response header get content length. Okay. Okay. So there is a workaround in fetch also, but it's by default um, that progress thing is given in the XHR thing, XHR requests. So okay, so there is the, I mean, important difference between those. Okay, that's a good one. I'm glad that I asked this line to a chat GPT, because I was about to skip this part. Okay, XML request is only available in the browser and not natively supported in Node.js environment, which is we already know that. On the other hand, fetch is part of the JavaScript language and is supported on all modern language JavaScript runtimes. Yeah, that's also we know. Now let's see about the abort controller in JavaScript. Okay, how do you abort a web request using abort controller in JavaScript? On catch abort error. So here is the controller dot abort. So let's go line by line. So just initialize the controller, that abort controller, into a controller constant, and it's getting some signal. Okay, now it passes that signal in that parameter. Okay, all we have to do is pass that signal to a parameter, and now if I abort this with a controller, it should work. Okay. So aborting the web request is useful for canceling request based on user actions. Okay, so there are multiple user actions, and so we don't want to like uh, call an API in the background if the user cancels some requests. So at that time, I think the abort controller is useful if you are using the fetch. Can it be done with the Axios as well? Let's just ask the chat GPT if we can do it with Axios. Can we do it with Axios and our beloved XHR? Okay, but you asked what about Axios and XHR? Let's break it down. So it works with the example like fetch. Now with the Axios, okay, controller is defined here, controller dot abort. Now where is the, okay, in signal we are passing. So in Axios we can also pass a signal, and inside signal we can pass that controller signal, and simply it's I mean essentially works like the fetch, and after that we can abort the Axios request as well. Now XHR doesn't allow the abort controller, but you can also abort manually using xhr.abort. Okay, so abort is already have so XHR function inbuilt to abort the request at the user demand whenever the user cancel the requests. So everything is called here, the basic functionality. Now the set time amount is of a 100 millisecond, and we are aborting the call. Let us call it in a browser, and let's just try to understand it. Call it right there. Okay, refuse to connect. Request aborted. So what happens if we just remove this set timeout? Request failed. So abort is anyway is going to work even if the request is failing. I mean, all right, great. Okay, this is the main one, I think. This is the main one. What are JavaScript polyfills for? Hmm. Okay, so let's just read it out because I don't have any idea about this. So polyfills in JavaScript are pieces of code that provides modern functionality to older browser. Okay, I remember that. I saw this in one senior devs video. Like it does convert that newer syntax of the JavaScript to the older one, so the browser can support, because most of the browser, if it's an older version, if it support the older JavaScript, it won't recognize the new syntax of the JavaScript. So the polyfills, the main purpose of polyfills is that it converts that ES6 JavaScript, whatever it is called, to older version, and that can be read by the browser itself. Okay. That lacks native support for those features. They bridge the gap between JavaScript language features and API available in modern browser and the limited capability of older browser versions. They can be implemented manually or included through libraries and are often used in conjunction with feature. I don't know about the manual implementation of the polyfills, but I do know about the these some webpacks are there because they convert the for example, if I'm using the React with the white bundler, so that bundler will automatically do the polyfill, I mean implement the polyfills, and that can be read by the older versions of browser. Okay, but manually I don't think I have ever used it. Common use cases include new JavaScript method, for example, error.prototype.includes or object.assign, etc. New APIs like fetch, promise, intersection, observer, modern browser support these now, but for a long time they have been polyfilled. I mean, they were not available, but they were polyfilled for a long time. Now they are available in the modern browsers. Libraries and services for polyfills. Core.js, a modular standard library for JavaScript which includes polyfills for a wide range of ECMAScript. So Core.js, with the Core.js, we can implement the polyfills. Now, if we are importing this flat map in from the Core.js, and then we can use the flat map. If the browser doesn't support it, then we can use this Core.js. I mean, uh, it should we should remember this part, that Core.js part. That I know the implementation of polyfills, like it converts the, it helps the browser to support the newer JavaScript. But how we are going to support this functionality manually? Manually, we can use this Core.js. So, I mean, that's an important point that we should remember. So the Core.js. Okay, we will go through the library of Core.js in some time uh, after we finish this part. So okay, so example is this, the flat map. If it is it available in the older browser, then we can use the Core.js to implement our flat map. Now polyfills.io is also one. We can also like add a script which is polyfills.io, a service that provides polyfills based on features and user agents specified in the request. Okay, it's very front end specific because that's all related to the browser. So it's for the perspective of front end interview. Uh, if we keep in mind this polyfill thing, and I think it's, it will be asked for some like senior developers. It will not be asked to a junior developer because they don't know how to, like, they just learned about the coding stuff. Then there is no meaning for them to learn about this. I mean, yes, it's good to know, but its implementation is pretty basic, so it's not a lot of effort to implement this part. And as I said earlier, the React.js, if you are using it and using with a webpack like White or some other rollup.js, it will already do this part for us, polyfilling part for us. Okay, let's move on to different question. Why is extending built-in JavaScript objects not a good idea? Extending a built-in native JavaScript object means adding properties function to its prototype. I mean, we can add another function to a prototype, but there is a chance that we can, mm, by mistake or by ignorance, we can override a existing JavaScript prototype function. So that's why we shouldn't use it. But I don't understand why interviews they ask me to create a polyfills. I mean, not polyfills. These prototypes for another type of functions, because this is the bad practice in real-time coding, because there is a chance of implementing a similar, I mean, duplicating that and overriding the existing function. If we duplicate the name, then the existing function will be overridden. So I don't know why to they used to ask in prototype or inheritance is used to ask in interviews. But hey, that's it. It is what it is. The implementation will override each other, and your code will have unpredictable behavior if these two methods do not work the same way. The only time you may want to extend native object is when you want to create a polyfill. Okay, so when we want to create a polyfill, it essentially providing your own implementation for a method that is part of the JavaScript specification but not exists in the users. I mean, there is no why we are going to create a polyfill in JavaScript if we can create a function which is specifically um, which have the some certain rules and sets, and it behaves like such. We can create another util function and we can use that util function anywhere in our code. It is very reliable that way, uh, unlike this implementing another polyfill function for it. Okay, older browser. Why it is general a good idea to leave the global JavaScript scope of a website as is and never touch it? Okay, so it's a lot of theory. So let's just ask the chat GPT to explain this thing by example, because reading this would be it's difficult for some people it's not. Explain by examples. Let's walk through examples. Okay, so global scope pollution. Here we declared a user with variable Alice and overrides the Alice value. I mean, these are two different scripts. Both libraries accidentally use user since they both live in the global scope. One overrides the other. Okay, so the script thing is a global, and we shouldn't use this part because of the naming conflicts. Okay, cluttered namespace. So where count items message Now imagine 20 plus global variables, impossible to track who owns what. Okay, that's the thing. We don't use that part. And normally in JavaScript, no one codes in a vanilla JavaScript. If they do, they might run into this type of problem. But most of the thing are handled by the frameworks like Angular and React for the front end, and they by nature won't allow us to create such variables. Memory leaks from scope leaks. Okay, how did it happen? Memory leaking. It created a big array and add event listener. Okay, console log. Closure keeps global data alive forever. I mean, you have declared it, so it will be alive forever. I mean, what are you talking about? Even even if you never need global data again, the reference keep it in memory. Okay, so it is a big data, and because of the closure, it will remember the global data. Okay, okay, now I get it. I mean, at some part it's important to understand that with the closure, it's using the global data, and global data is very big, and it's only using this one, so it can cause. I mean, not memory. Okay, we can say the memory leaks, but it's using extra memory with no purpose. It is better way to say that part instead of using just like memory leaks. Security issue. Okay, Windows. how how what type of person uses this part, man? Window.api key. I mean, there is a reason why we use .env file. Now, solution: how to avoid touching global scope. I mean, using it in a function. Variable is a function. Okay. Use if invoke function never leaks to global scope. Okay. Now this is going to be reference error. Okay. That's why it's not going to global scope won't know about it. Use ES modules. Okay, it yeah, modularity would be helpful in every part. Should we read this part? I mean, I don't want to because it's very technical jargon that will just confuse me even more. Mm, I mean, yeah, leave it. Let's move next to other thing. Explain the difference between common JS module and ES modules in JavaScript. Okay, so first difference that I think is, but just by the syntax of uh, exporting and importing other modules into our what we say files, exchanging modules. So common JS, we in that common JS we use require to import something from other file. In ES6 we use module.export or export object to define the export of a module. I mean, module.export is already used in common JS. We can directly export in the ES6 module. Yeah, like directly exporting it and using it in another file. It way simpler and much easier to like for the auto completion. I think require also have the auto completion, but sometimes it doesn't work. um, so we can use the ES6 module, and most probably most of the people uses this thing already, even unknowingly they are using it. So let's just read out the difference between them. So module syntax: require for importing and module export for exporting. It's simpler: import for importing, export for exporting. Environment: primarily used in Node.js for server-side development, designed for both browser and server-side JavaScript. Node.js. Okay. Loading: synchronous loading for modules, asynchronous loading for modules. I mean, it's an advantage to use ES6 module because of this asynchronous loading. And structure: dynamic imports can be conditionally called. Static import export at the top level. Okay, didn't understand what it does try to say, but okay. File extension would be JS or MJS with type module in the package JS. Okay, so to use this part, import export, we need to add this type module. If we want to keep our JavaScript file extension .js, we have to add this type module. Either way, if we don't want it and also want the import export functionality, we can uh, change the extension to module.js like this, mjs. Okay, browser support: not natively supported. The common JS natively supported in modern browsers. Okay, that's also an advantage. This one is thinking extra configuration would be a disadvantage, but it's a single line of code to just allow the .js file with import export modules. Now the optimization: limited optimization due to dynamic nature. Okay, allows for optimization like tree shaking due to static structure. I mean, what was the tree shaking? As I remember that tree shaking does the remove all the unused JavaScript. I think that is. Now the compatibility: widely used in existing Node.js code bases. Okay, that one part is valid because whatever the uh, projects in Node.js that I saw mostly use that require and modular export thing, and we can use it in newer versions. But who in this time uses Node.js? This probably most of the projects, newly created projects, are using uh, frameworks like Nest.js, which is a Node.js framework, and it's very optimized for the folder structure and everything, and it's very scalable. It has already defined structure for the project, so we can directly jump into code. What is this? What are the various data types in JavaScript? Okay, this is not going to be advanced thing, man. We are not reading from the advanced part. Intermediate and advanced. What are polyfills? Initiators, generators, server side. Okay. Okay, so my bad. I should just open this uh, topics in several tabs to remember it, man. So we left out the initiator and generator. So let's just create another tab for it, and for server side event as well, and flags and descriptors. I mean, that would be enough. After that, I think I should uh, turn off the live stream. I mean, close the live stream, because I don't know how long I can stretch out the live streaming with this YouTube. So I just try to complete these three topics, and after that we will continue in another live stream. Okay, so here is the what are initiators and generators in JavaScript and what are they used for. Okay, it's like a very new concept for me as well. In JavaScript, initiators and generators are powerful tools for managing sequences of data and controlling the flow of execution in more complex way, which I didn't understand what it tried to say. I mean, this part, the controlling the flow of execution thing, is little bit understandable, but other than that, it's totally jumped out of my head. Iterators are objects that define a sequence. Mind blowing, man. This whole line is technical terms. How would a human would understand this part? I mean, we have to do a lot of chat GPT on this, man, to understand this thing. Okay, I think it's already a half an hour. I will take a break for like some half an hour or hour, and after that we'll jump right back into this topic because I think it's very important. So let's see. Okay, it's going to be an hour, 51 minutes. So let's just close it off, and I will like continue with the topics that are left off. Okay, so